So we are recording, and I just want to say thank you to Maile for coming out today. This is the first ever webinar series during lunch. We start off small and we're gonna grow it throughout the school year. But I just want to say thank you guys for coming out and for taking the time. We had a little bit of technical issues, so I know we only have a short amount of time. So we're just gonna go till about 12:40. We're gonna have a pretty brief conversation. And then we'll try our best to kind of capture some questions. If we don't get to all the questions, then we'll send an email and reply to those and go there. Okay. But we appreciate you guys for coming out. And she's great. So we just want to say hello to her. My lady's coming out from up north, if I believe. And she is a user experience designer and researcher. She works for a company called onfleet.com, and which I believe is a logistics platform. I could be off in my description there, but we met back in 2018 in Santa Monica through the Interaction Design program at Santa Monica College, and I just felt like she had made this really awesome progression going from like a sort of a graphic designer into user experience, user interaction design. And really, I mentioned this to Maile, but I said you really are an example of a 21st century professional that sort of evolves through one field and into the next, but ultimately using the same skills across different industries. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to invite you and just hear a little bit about yourself, and then maybe answer some questions for the students. But I just want to say thank you for coming out. Appreciate it. And we're going to leave it over to you. So the floor is yours.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that. I have a presentation actually, since you asked. I've been approached by Facebook a couple times to interview, and so I did in February, right before the lockdown, and I created a presentation for that. So I'll just share the beginning of that. I don't know if I'll share all of it because it looks like it says disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh, okay. You should be able to do it. I set up multiple participants.
Yeah.
Okay.
There we go.
Wow, that's awesome. Facebook. Very cool.
Yeah, I actually need to email them again. Do you see the picture of me? Okay. So basically, this is my intro of these are graphics I created. So when I I'm a self-taught graphic designer. So when I worked in graphics, I taught myself Photoshop and Illustrator when I worked in the apparel industry. So one of the first questions you sent me was about my previous jobs. My first career was as a graphic designer for the apparel industry and a product development manager. So I worked for CNC, BB, Juicy, Roxy, a few of those guys. So these are some of the graphics I created for that, which is it's super fun. As in my own challenge, I did a 30-day project with my dog at the time. He's passed, but his name was Gramps, and he was a senior rescue. So those were fun to play with. So I was actually looking at a master's degree when I stumbled on this interaction design bachelor's program because I wanted to teach. I wanted to do something else with graphics. I didn't like the apparel industry. I don't advise going into it unless your passion is actually the design of clothes. I totally get it. I was there. The industry is kind of broken, and from an environmental standpoint, I was kind of against it. So I was trying to find something else. I went into hospitality. I worked in hotels for fun for a little while. I worked for the city of Santa Monica, and then I actually saw this degree and joined that program in the first cohort. So I went back. So my first bachelor's is in human geography from UCSB, and my second is in interaction design from Santa Monica College. So this is a really exciting program. We were the guinea pigs, so we were given a lot of projects and a lot of professional companies in the area. So we worked with, I got to work with Hulu. I got to work with the American Heart Association, SAP, which is a huge company that you probably won't hear of until you're a lot older. But it was pretty fun. So that was me graduating with two of my professors. That was my cohort. So we were, again, the guinea pigs. It was pretty awesome. My senior project was this conceptual idea called Ally, which was a wearable. This was also fun. I did all the graphics for that. I mocked up the screens. I 3D printed a copy of one of these little guys. And I made this whole video for the IXDA awards because someone said I should submit it. And then I was actually shortlisted. And then I found out that it wasn't just conceptual student projects, but internationally, like the year before in the same category, LinkedIn's native app won. So that was kind of unexpected. And I think I might stop there just because it gets into the weeds of what I do. But last year I worked for eHarmony, or a couple years ago now. I volunteered with Code for America. Hack for LA is a volunteer tech kind of civic tech program. So people are in these brigades across America, and it's all part of Code for America, but you get to work on different projects. So people will join that just to kind of practice different programs. And then here we've got I did this fellowship for Code for America. Getting into the weeds of things, it's what I do is a lot of user interface design based on user research, designing products based on cognitive psychology principles, behavioral psychology, but also there's like best patterns and practices for UI and UX. And so this kind of gets into when you interview and you go into these case studies, you have to talk about like what you actually gave, put into the project and stuff like that. So that's all these guys. And I'm trying to see if there's anything else in here that's interesting. But it's probably too much. Oh, except for this one, because I created a GIF with my dog, which is important. So my portfolio is my first and last name.com. And so you can kind of see a little bit more of these things. I'm going to stop sharing just because I want to go into these questions that were asked initially that you sent over, Miguel.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I do, I do have one question to kind of bridge the gap.
Yeah.
So the first unit of the class that we did was graphic design. So in terms of exposure, we've seen graphic design and we haven't seen UX just yet in the class, but I do mention to my students, it's like, there is a design component and that you can bring into other fields. And so I'm curious to know, like, for those of us that don't know, like, what exactly would be user experience, and how does graphic design connect to user experience, or what role does that play in it?
Yeah, that's a really important distinguishing factor there of like what is UX versus graphic design, and how it helps. Having the background in graphic design and visual design was super important as a foundation for user experience design. There's a whole process with research and design that doesn't require any pixel pushing, so to speak. Like, you don't need to be able to use these programs. There's a ton of programs now that make it super easy to prototype. Adobe XD, Sketch, Figma. You can do Miro. Miro is a really cool website that you can just open all these different templates and kind of play around with these different little UI, user interface elements. It makes it super easy to prototype, but knowing kind of visual design principles and how things look kind of in an overall holistic view and how they interact with each other is super important. Understanding fonts is important. And I think it gives people an edge because there's a lot of boot camps out there right now, and people do the General Assembly UX certificate, or I think it's called, but those programs are great, except for that they don't teach graphic and visual design. And it's sort of, it can be how do I say it? It's not helpful when people try to apply and they can't really show anything graphically. Visually, people are the most moved. I was listening to a speaker who's a really, really well-known UX designer and teacher, and he he also does a lot of strategy. And he was basically saying that when it comes to user experience design, people don't understand there's so many different levels to it. And the visual design is the most visceral. So people have the most like emotional reaction to the visual design of a product. And it can look great, but if it doesn't work the way people expect it to, like if you guys have ever been on a website and you couldn't figure out where some information was, so you just gave up and left the site, that's the problem with poor user experience design. So user experience design is taking kind of the elements of visual design, elements of psychology, elements of user research, so understanding who the person is that's going to be using the product, and then putting those all together and creating a product that really flows well for anybody who uses it, makes it intuitive and easy to use, user friendly, as people say.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you for making that that distinguishing, because sometimes students say, "Well, I'm going to make posters and this and that," but but you can. What Maile does is like starts off, and it's so many different levels. So she's a problem solver, guys, and so ultimately she's solving these web problems to make it accessible, easy to use online. But online has a lot of information, so she's problem solving. And she's making it accessible. And one way to do that, sort of the starting point, is graphic design. So that's just the beginning. And so just being able to see where it goes from there is really interesting. So I just wanted to make that distinction for those that are kind of wondering, how does this connect with that? And then I'll leave it open for some questions. So that way, because I know a few of you guys sent some questions in, so I did send it to her and she's going to answer them for you. So
the first question was, what are some jobs you've done and what was the most memorable? I've had a lot of jobs. I worked a lot of jobs starting since I was 15. I worked through high school and college and supporting myself all the way through. So there's a lot there. And I worked in apparel. Is very memorable. There were different elements of it that was very memorable. For sure, we had a lot of celebrities in and out of places because we were in LA. So that was always interesting. And I don't know, I worked in hotels, which was also very memorable. I mean, working with people coming in from all over the world is really fun because you get to meet people from all different countries. And then another question was, for anyone going into graphic design in general, any advice on what to do in college/free time? Well, those are two very different things. So in college, definitely take as many hands-on classes as you can and get those general education courses done from the beginning. Like just get those out of the way. All the stuff that you need to take in order to get to do your higher level and elective courses for your degree, like Psychology 1, stuff like that. Those are the foundational courses, and those are super helpful because you could also end up changing your mind. You might find something that's super interesting to you in one of those courses and change direction, which is what I did with geography. But in your free time also, I mean, volunteering in like, you know, Hack for LA is in Los Angeles. And there's a lot of organizations like that where you can kind of volunteer with nonprofits to learn more about an industry that you're interested in. Internships are probably the easiest way to get into tech. If you are interested in coding, I just have to say this because I did interview at Facebook and like their salaries are off the charts, ridiculous. Their developers get paid more as interns than people do as professionals in other companies because the company is just so huge. So internships are a great way to get started anywhere. I highly recommend it. I do not recommend like solo projects. We had an option with that in my program. And I will say that the people who did their own solo projects didn't end up working in the industry yet, or haven't yet found their in. So people who started with internships and really pushed and really worked hard to find the opportunities themselves, you know, got further ahead. Oh, also, there are a lot in UX. There is a whole, there's a whole cohort of people around the world, and they all support each other in user experience design. I did not find this in In fashion, definitely, I did not find it there. And with like visual design and graphic design, there's a lot of people out there that are really, really great artists, but they kind of like keep to themselves, or there's not really a great way to network with them, because, you know, you have like different artist openings or galleries and stuff like that, but you don't really get to interact. And with user experience design, there's a whole cohort around the world where people just want to share different resources and processes and answer any questions. There's tons of events right now. There are a ton of virtual events that are free to anybody. So if you're interested in going to any of those, I have a ton of different resources for those things. Let's see. What role do colors play with designing? A lot. I mean, again, with visual design, it's like if you go into a room and it's painted a weird color and you don't like it, you don't want to be in that room. That can affect you with artwork. You know, people use in paintings, in photography, people use unusual colors just to elicit like an emotional reaction. So it's super important. And actually, there's whole websites on how different colors mean different things and have different effects on people. So like fast food restaurants have really bright colors because they don't want people to be comfortable. So they don't want people to stay in the restaurant too long. But if you go to a spa, they're going to have these light blue colors and aquas and teals and try to make you feel more comfortable, and muted tones. They do that with hospitals as well. In UX and UI design, or user experience / user interface design, there's a lot of, that is also very important. Another huge component of color is accessibility. So if you've ever been on a website and you couldn't read a button, or you couldn't read the text because the font color and the background color were too similar, that is a problem with contrast. And that can actually end up, I can't think of the word, but it ends up making it so a lot of people who might have slight visual impairments, which is a huge population, not be able to actually read what is on your site. So that is a huge element to poor user experience design, or the difference between poor and good user experience design. And the last question, how did you discover you wanted to pursue a career in STEM? What programs or experiences do you have in high school that you felt assisted you later in your education or pursuit? And what advice do you have for high school girls interested in pursuing a career in STEM? First of all, I'm too old for that. In high school, we didn't have any mention of STEM. My outlet, I was telling Sophia earlier, was fashion design and photography. So I was doing that for fun. I took screen printing. I took a fashion merchandising class. But now there's a lot of opportunities out there. So for girls in high school and guys, I'd say just, look for those opportunities, look for those programs, and just take them. Just see what is interesting to you, see what's fun. Let's see. I know it's 12:38, but I can't.
And we have a couple minutes there because, guys, your classes start at 12:45, right? So you start logging in at 12:45. Okay. All right.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I don't know if any of you asked that question, but it's, it's a 3-part epic question that, there's like entire talks on it, but I could find information for sure. There's a lot of really great resources out there.
Okay. And then that kind of brings to mind a question with regards to like a program, like now that you've kind of gone through it,
Mm-hmm.
Schools are trying to build programs
Mm-hmm.
to make it accessible for students, right?
Mm-hmm.
Based on what, we've talked about, what you've sort of seen briefly, and, just by having conversations with a couple of our students, what, any recommendations in terms of like how to have more accessibility when it comes to science, technology, and like how can we make it more equitable for women to be accessible here? Like I know it starts early, middle school, high school, but while they're in a program, is there anything that you can think of that maybe we could do early on, experiences or anything, just any insight that we could do just in high school that can really help prepare our students, all students, but mainly the women so that they do have a confidence coming out of high school with these skill sets. Any insights on that?
That's a hard one because it's still an issue in professional world. I am one woman among a very large cohort of male employees. In my dev teams or developer teams, the engineers are disproportionately male. But I will say that some of the best designers, some of the best women in the tech industry are in design and research, which is hugely, it's not that there's a big difference. I know that like people that I've interviewed in the past and have been really great mentors are male, but there's an empathetic quotient there's like an element of being empathetic and compassion that women tend to have an edge on. I don't know if it's a maternal instinct or whatever, but that's a super important factor as well with UX. With STEM in general, the most successful companies have the most diverse teams and are extremely collaborative across departments. So companies that I've worked with where I've really been able to kind of move the ball forward as far as making UX more of a part of the process, because really ultimately the customer or the end user of the product is the most important part of designing. And so understanding them is super important, and having the empathy and compassion for their needs and the problems that they're facing is a big part of it. I'd say I'm extremely biased with user experience design because I think that it can solve everything. I really like there's a process called design thinking. And if you look that up, there's these two teachers. I think Bill Burnett is one of them. It comes from a really cool school called the D School in Stanford. IDEO is one of the founders, helped found them, but there's a design thinking book on how to design your life. So it's using the same principles, using research, using collaborative efforts, using these workshops to work together to come up with really great and innovative ideas that can change the way companies work, that can change products. Like IDEO designed the mouse, like the original mouse that you click with, like it's stuff like that. So I know that's kind of a little bit off topic, but because I wasn't in high school at the time, I can't really say. Again, I can find resources. I think that ultimately though, really developing collaboration and encouraging everyone to take part is super important. I don't think there's any limit. There's no reason why any girl or boy should be left out of any program, because there's something in tech, I think, for everyone. If you just know what your skill set is and you just keep learning, that's one of the most important things. So, yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I know that was like a big loaded question, but guys, I hope you got something out of this. I know we're about a couple minutes away.
Mhm.
So, I want to say, please, share your thanks. I'd be more than happy to set it up. But does anyone want to say anything, or just really quick? I know we got 2 more minutes, but anyone want to share something, say anything? Okay, don't overload her with a big question. It's just something simple. But I can definitely forward it, or she can maybe get back to us by email, send a message if you have a specific question you really want to get out there.
Mhm.
So I'll leave the floor open. So anybody want to say something? Here's your chance. Shania, you got like a question that's kind of looming, it looks like.
I don't know how to like form the sentence.
I totally get that.
I guess I'm kind of just asking like how, I think one of my questions I answered was like, how did you know like this is the career you wanted? Like,
Good
was there an
question.
event where it's like, this is what I want to do?
Yeah, I knew the first time I took a user experience design course that the second I learned what user experience design was, I was like, oh, I found my calling. So I didn't just get into it because, yeah, there's a high salary, which is what a lot of people are trying to do right now. They're like, oh, I'm just going to transfer to UX design because it pays really well. It's not something that just anyone can do, but anyone can develop the skills to do it. And in my careers over my life so far, I have always kind of looked at an entire process of like an organization or how things are run holistically, and then try to problem solve where things could be more efficient, where things could work better for the people that are using it. And then so when I learned what user experience design was, I was like, oh, that's what I have been doing. So it was kind of a reverse order of things. But I will say that all of my life growing up, I wanted to be a fashion designer. So that changed drastically, in my 20s. So you never know. I was just telling my cousin this, who's like, I think he's 21 now. Just do whatever you want to do now, which like makes you happy. Continue learning the whole time, though. Never stop learning anything. Like there's so many things, so many new things. UX design is constantly changing. So it's still evolving. And by the time you get into your professional careers, there could be all different careers there. So just keep doing what you love, and you can always change.
Well, I can't close any better than that. So guys, thank you so much. I know you have class. So, please, thank you again to Maile. You guys are dismissed, get to class.
Yeah.
But thank you for coming. This was so much fun, and I really appreciate you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks,
Awesome.
everyone. Feel free to message if you need anything.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye. You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Awesome.
Cool.
I will stop that recording now.